Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video we are looking at Opendoor technologies. This was a stock analysis request from one of the followers, and I wanted to let you know that anyone can make these requests and I'll most likely cover them, especially if there is an actionable trade setup to follow. And in the case of this chart, we aren't necessarily looking at a long trade setup, as we have actually formed a potential 5-wave move to the downside, which is actually highly suggestive of continuation in this downtrend once the correction is complete. And this will remain the main scenario here on this chart as long as we don't manage to get a break above the last level of resistance, the 78.6% retracement at the $15.6 level. And then if we do actually get a sustained break above this level, we can start looking with a higher degree of probabilities for an overall larger uptrend, but I would still need actually a break above the all-time high to invalidate this idea of a potential 1-2 setup, or at least an A-B setup here within this initial 5-wave move to the downside. Because other interpretations are possible and the market can ultimately always do whatever it wants, but it's just not necessarily suggesting us from a probabilities standpoint that we should expect continuation higher, especially as we only managed here to get into the 61.8% retracement. Sure, we did get a brief break above it, maybe not even so brief, but nothing sustained, and we are basically still within the area of resistance. And not only that, this is only a 3-wave move to the upside after a 5-wave correction, or not 5-wave correction, a 5-wave move to the downside. We only got a 3-wave correction, which suggests that this wave B could in fact be complete and we could already be in the wave C to the downside, if not something more bearish like an impulse within the wave 3, where then we would still expect, even after this wave is complete, a 4th and a 5th to take us even lower. Now, with this said, again, we are tracking the area of resistance. We are not saying this chart is permanently doomed. We just need to see a sustained break above certain levels for a signal that it may have a realistic chance for a breakout. And until that happens, yeah, it is a low probability, as we did not manage even to form an internal 5-wave structure to the upside, yeah, let alone actually break the area of resistance. Now, in the smaller time frame, as I was mentioning, we can track here a larger ABC movement that could in the end work out even as a wave 1 part of a larger leading diagonal. And we will be tracking here ultimately that area of support unless we manage to actually hold here the area of support for a double 1-2-1-2 setup that we could actually track even now. And in such an interpretation, we can actually notice that we did even get into the first level of support for such an interpretation. And let's actually track this in white. And we have here a 1-2 setup that could have technically completed there, although I do have to say, based on the internal structure and how deep we retraced in the last couple of trading days, I would not necessarily look with a high probability for this movement to the upside to have actually formed a local low. Yeah, we could have actually considered this to be something like a WXY in a complete structure, in a complete correction to the downside within the wave 2. But unfortunately, after this move to the upside, we have failed to hold here the 78.6% retracement and we did get a sustained break below it. Now, it may still be salvaged because, as always, invalidation is at the beginning of this initial movement to the upside, but the probabilities don't necessarily suggest to me that we should expect with a high degree that this will push directly higher, and I am looking with a higher likelihood at least for a reset in this wave 2 in white, yeah, if not something more bearish like the wave C in yellow already unfolding. Now, in such a scenario, I will be primarily tracking at the moment here something like an ABC movement to be unfolding internally within this wave 2. And again, something more bearish may be going on, but we are tracking the levels of support and we are taking it one by one. As we break them, we move to the next level of support, while always keeping in mind that the interpretation, the main scenario, remains the yellow, larger push to the downside into new low territory. But for now, I just don't have any particularly high resistance area for the smaller time frame, yeah, other than what we have on the larger time frame. I could maybe track here for something like, who knows, maybe even a double 1-2-1-2 setup to be developing within this area. But to be honest, I may even be able to consider this to be an ABC pattern complete. And yeah, in that case, let's do just that. we can track the potential wave 2 to have bottom here, and we can track in orange for the continuation lower, or then in the white scenario we will be tracking a more direct breakout even in a potential wave 3, and in orange we'll be looking for the wave C to extend even lower. And I can actually even go ahead and give you an ideal target for such a wave C, and that would be the 100% extension of the wave A, and that would be the $4.6 level. Now, it doesn't need to absolutely unfold as a wave C. This could also work out as something like WXY, in which case, to be honest, we may get another low, in this wave C to the downside, in this ABC. It could work out as something like a 1, 2, a third, a fourth, and a fifth. In this case, we may form a slightly lower low within this wave 2, and we may form an early bottom where, again, we don't absolutely need to form a larger 5-wave move to actually allow a completion to be in place here. Now, with this said, we need to break here above internal resistance levels, and the first I would probably be watching out for would be here internally for a potential ABC as part of a larger ending diagonal within the wave C. And in this case, I would be watching here the levels between the $6.5 all the way up to the $7.6 level, where a break above the 78.6% retracement here would be actually a good signal that this structure may have formed a more significant bottom, but again, not a high degree probability. I would still have here relevant resistance levels to be tracked internally. And overall, this area, this entire structure is quite choppy. We may have something like a 5-way move to the upside in this area, but even this looks better as an ABC movement, most likely, which is why I won't necessarily put too much emphasis on what is going on with this exact structure. We are waiting again for the long side. We are always going to need to wait for the larger break above the 78.6% retracement, and for the short side, we will need to wait still for a 5-way move to the downside initially, because short or shorting in general is a lot more difficult than placing a long order and just accumulating in relevant areas. This may be used, for example, as an exit area, but not necessarily for entering short positions that you need to continuously pay to maintain and don't necessarily have even the same potential as on the long side. And for now, there really isn't much else to add. You should be focusing here on the levels here on the smaller time frame. We have relevant areas of resistance and support internally, but mostly I would still like to see a reset within this wave 2, and then a larger initial 5-way move to the upside that can be tracked with higher degree of reliability, that could potentially create an internal 1-2 setup to track that could be potentially interesting for the long side. But again, from a large time frame perspective, this is a high risk chart, at least on the long side. And for now, these are the levels, this is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe and let me know what else you want me to cover, and I'll do my best to do that in the days and weeks ahead. And until then, I hope you have a nice day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.